Rapporteur.
In a world of great power rivalry, the countries in between have a choice: compete with each other for favour or combine to create a third path with real impact. Colleagues, these were the words that Mark Carney used to give us perhaps the clearest description yet of the challenge that Europe is facing today. And Carney is right. The international order is in rupture. War has returned to our continent and is showing its ugly face around the world. Long-standing assumptions about free trade, collective security and international law are being tested as they haven't been in decades. But Europe still has a choice. And today, right here on this floor, and tomorrow during the vote, we have a unique opportunity to respond to our Canadian friends by saying it clearly and loudly that when faced with the choice between simply lamenting the fading of an old order or acting together to shape a better one, Europe chooses action. We choose action for our citizens and our values, and we choose action not alone, but together with our partners, Canada chief among them. Dear
colleagues, today Canada is perhaps the most European country outside Europe. Even though we recall that Canada isn't yet in Eurovision, we are united not only by our common heritage, by the languages that we share, but also by our common values like democracy, free trade, and a strong social model. Today, Canada shares Europe's strategic interests and the challenges that we are facing together.
An assertive China and an increasingly erratic American ally. Europeans and Canadians know full well that we can only safeguard our interests in security, whether that be in the Arctic, in Ukraine, with regards to climate change, or in Greenland, by standing together and by deepening our cooperation. So it is high time for this close strategic alignment to be translated into a deeper Euro-Canadian alliance. It is high time to put meat on the bone of the commitments made last year at the EU-Canada summit, and it is high time for this Parliament to take a clear position with the first report in over a decade laying out a roadmap of where we want this partnership to go. It's a roadmap on security, where at a time of growing conflict and threats of annexation, Canada and Europe must uphold the most fundamental principle that no country has the right to invade or annex its neighbour. But we are also clear-eyed and recognise that in this new world order, our ambitions must be matched by our capabilities. That is why this report strongly welcomes Canada's participation as the only non-European country in the SAFE programme, and we support its further integration into the European Defence Technological Industrial Base. Second, this report is a roadmap on multilateralism. Europe and Canada remain committed to defending international institutions such as the UN, the ICC and the WTO, not out of idealism, but we know it is in the interest of our people. But we also recognise that these institutions need reform. And this is why this report urges Europe and Canada to take the lead in these reforms, build alliances and coalitions to address the most urgent collective action problems we have, like AI, cybersecurity or climate change, that no single great power can address alone. Third, this is a roadmap on trade. While others declare trade wars, practice short-sighted protectionism and weaponise supply chains, Europe and Canada must choose open, fair and diversified trade. This means completing the ratification of CETA, and it also means exploring deeper integration of critical supply chains from raw materials to energy. And finally, it's a roadmap for our societies. Because where others retreat behind walls and embrace fearful isolationism, Europe and Canada stand tall and take pride in the attractiveness and openness of our societies. And therefore, through Horizon Europe, Erasmus Plus and other labour mobility initiatives, we bring Canadians and Europeans even closer together, because we know that alliances work best when it's not just governments cooperating, but people. Colleagues, I began with a quote from Prime Minister Carney, so let me end with another. We know the old order is not coming back. We shouldn't mourn it. Nostalgia is not a strategy, but we believe that from the fractures we can build something better, stronger and more just. Colleagues, Europe and Canada have a historic opportunity to lead that effort right now. So let us seize it by voting for this report and by inviting Prime Minister Carney to this floor so we can discuss together to take the Euro-Canadian alliance to a new level. Because let's be honest, if we can't deepen our cooperation with Canada right now, with whom can we? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask to take floor for the Commission. Commissioner Kos, floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will start with an anecdote. Mr. Andrews, you've been speaking about the attractiveness of the EU, and a few months back I have gotten an email from a citizen of Canada. Madam Commissioner, could you explain to me under which conditions Canada could become a member of the EU? I gladly answered. I couldn't answer positively, but what we are doing, and we have heard from Tobias, is really new partnership or partnerships with Canada. So let me say by way of introduction that Canada is one of the EU's closest partners. We share similar values, the same commitment to open, pluralistic societies, and a similar vision for the global rules-based multilateral order. In these changing times, we face similar challenges. We are both seeking to manage relations with Canada's southern neighbour. Canada's diversification drive is global, but the EU is a principal pillar of it. Canada is a NATO ally to many of our member states. It is also a G7 partner. This is not new. The EU has an excellent and long-standing relationship with Canada. 2026 marks the 50th anniversary of the opening of the EU delegation in Ottawa. 10 years ago, we signed the EU-Canada Strategic Partnership Agreement and the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, CETA, which came into force in 2017, and these agreements have delivered major benefits for both sides. However, common wisdom states that you get to know your true friends when times are hard. What we have discovered is that Canada has stood solidly and unfailingly by Ukraine and Europe over the past 4 years. It was the largest per capita supporter of Ukraine amongst the G7 countries at the end of 25 and has recently increased its support with $2 billion in military equipment. It has stood by Greenland and Denmark on their sovereignty and territorial integrity, opening a consulate in Nuuk in February. This also indicates to us that we need to cooperate in the high north, the Arctic, as well as on Europe's eastern flank. With the geopolitical changes that we have been witnessing over the past year, we have consciously decided with Canada to expand, deepen and intensify our relations. Prime Minister Carney's speech, you've been quoting him, at the World Economic Forum in Davos in January, which resonated with many leaders around the world, gave a good explanation of why we are doing this. That decision to deepen our ties is reflected in the outcome of the EU-Canada summit in Brussels in June last year, which was a pivotal moment and set very high ambitions for our partnership. We made new commitments on security and defence and in our economic and trading relationship. The adoption of the Security and Defence Partnership clearly stands out. It has enabled us to sign last month the bilateral agreement with Canada under the SAFE regulation, which is just one of many ways we are supporting Europe's defence posture and our mutual security with Canada. At the same time, the summit signalled an intensification of our engagement on ongoing key areas of cooperation, namely the digital partnership, the EU-Canada strategic partnership on raw materials and the Green Alliance. That is all good and well, but as your recommendations also underline, we now need to focus on delivery. Delivery is our watchword. Aiding our delivery are the European Commission Special Envoy for Relations with Canada, Joost Korte, and the personal representative of Prime Minister Carney for Relations with the EU, John Hannaford, both appointed late last year. I am pleased to say that we are making progress on delivery. Here are some highlights. I already mentioned SAFE. We are now working to facilitate the growth of flesh on the bones. concrete projects. Beyond this, we are moving forward on the implementation of the security and defence partnership across the board. We cooperate and coordinate closely on every main foreign and security policy priority, from the Arctic to Ukraine, from sanctions to democratic resilience and the fight against hybrid and cyber threats. We have launched negotiations on a digital free trade agreement and held the first meeting of the Digital Partnership Council. We continue to promote the benefits of CETA in Canada and at home. We are working together bilaterally and in multilateral fora on boosting access and supply chains for critical raw materials. We hope to launch an industrial dialogue very soon. There are many areas of increased engagement between the EU and Canada that I could list, but I would also like to listen to you, so I look forward to your remarks and your further deliberations.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Now for the Inter Committee will speak Javier Moreno Sanchez. Floor is yours.
Gracias, Presidente. Señora Comisaria.
Thank you, President. Madam Commissioner, with the report from my colleague Kremer, we're sending out a very clear message to our Canadian friends. And as he said very clearly, it's the most European country outside of Europe. Now, more than ever in this upset world, we need a closer, more dynamic relationship with Canada, a crucial partner for the EU, both geopolitically speaking and economically speaking as well. As such, CETA is key. Its provisional application was a huge success, giving benefits on both sides of the Atlantic for large companies, with a 75% increase in trade exchange for farmers, with new markets as well, opening up access to public contracts, generating jobs and enhancing worker mobility. And we're also going to have a digital agreement attached to it. Now, we have two tasks ahead of us. We need to have an information campaign about the opportunities linked to CETA, and also through parliamentary diplomacy, we have to convince our national partners to ratify the agreements. 10 countries so far haven't done it. Now, the Canadians don't understand that, and they're right. And we have to treat our friends well. Thank you.
Now, colleagues, before I will give the floor to the next speaker, we are far behind the schedule today, so as you may know, no, not you, you are not guilty, no, but please, I will be more strict than we usually with the timing flow, please cooperate. For EPP will speak Sebastião Bugalho.
President, Commissioner Kass, não deixa de ser simbólico.
It is highly symbolic that we should be presenting this not in external policy or in trade as a context, but enlargement. Canada is almost a candidate country. 3 billion euros as a contribution to EU GDP, 1.3 billion to Canadian GDP, greater visibility for companies, greater transparency for consumers. The EU and Canada can demonstrate that free trade works and can work for all. 10 member states are laggards in ratification, and there's no reason for that. If we look at defence, following the 2025 summit, Canada was the first non-EU country to join the SAFE programme. We will build an industrial base to defend Europe on that basis. As we look across the Atlantic, we want to strengthen our capacity together. And of course, the NATO balance is not what it was.
They have defended peace in the Middle East, joining the international coalition against Daesh. They have defended the sovereignty of our continent with more than 23 billion euros to help Ukraine. And they defend European soil today, leading NATO operations in Latvia, showing our enemies that Baltic countries may be small in territory, but strong in their resilience against the Russian threat. Today, Canada is undoubtedly, as said, the more European of non-European powers, and certainly the most Atlantic of the American nations in this moment of time. Their principal pragmatism points away. Pointless proclamation doesn't. Like Canada, our union has no common language, no common ethnicity, and no common religion. Their strength is their civility and their capacity of uniting when history demands them to. Today, we also face that demand. Tomorrow, we ask the Commission, let's face it together. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker for S&D Group, Brando Bonifay. Floor is yours.
Grazie, Presidente.
President, thank you. The words of Mark Carney in Davos really struck gold because they were very clear. The old world is over and we've moved into a new one, a world in which the EU has to change or to disappear. And that's why with Canada, as with other medium powers, the EU has to build more advanced political and trade relations. Particularly, we have to do that with all those other countries like Canada that share our will to shape a new multilateral order from the ashes of what so sadly we are seeing burning before us right now. And that's why we have to continue to implement CETA, the agreement with Canada, where even in the past we had some very heated arguments, even in this Parliament. It's led to a 75% increase in trade between the two blocs in less than 10 years. So we have to move ahead with determination and courage in the interest of Europeans. We can do it, so let's do it. Thank you.
European Patriots will speak. Angeline Fourret. Floor is yours.
This recommendation on strengthening cooperation between the EU and Canada seems, at first sight, to be uncontroversial. But behind the text, what this Parliament is really calling for is the full ratification of the Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, CETA, ratification by all member states. You remember CETA. In France, in Belgium, in Germany, thousands of citizens and farmers took to the streets to protest. Why? Because this agreement opens up our markets to agricultural goods that once again do not respect the same standards that are imposed on our farmers. And while our farmers have to respect ever more stringent rules, unfair competition is being organised against our own market at a time where the European Union is trying to impose the Mercosur agreement. Adding further trade pressure to our farmers is irresponsible. Let's be clear, this text is not a straightforward analysis of EU-Canada relations. It's a political signal sent to our governments telling them to speed up their ratification of an agreement that remains on ice in a number of member states, including France. In other words, this strategic partnership is becoming an instrument for political pressure to impose the ratification of the CETA. And if CETA wasn't bad enough, this Parliament also wants to open up to Canada European funding for defence with safe 150 billion euros of our taxpayers' money should be spent on our own defence industry, not be spent outside our borders. I'm all in favour of cooperation, but not at the expense of our sovereignty or of our agriculture.
From Renew Europe, Dan Barnum, please.
Thank you, Chair. In a geopolitical environment increasingly defined by a great power rivalry and rising protectionism, the European Parliament highlights a critical truth. Strengthening our bond with Canada is no longer just a choice. It is a strategic necessity. As we face an unstable transatlantic relationship with the US marked by shifting priorities and economic friction, Canada remains our most reliable, like-minded ally on the North American continent. We share more than values. We share a commitment to a rule-based order and economic resilience. A vital pillar of this renewed partnership is our energy security. This report emphasises the urgency of deep cooperation in the nuclear energy sector, specifically to a modernised Canada-Euratom agreement. By collaborating on nuclear reactors and securing stable supply chains for nuclear fuel and critical minerals, we can break our dependencies on hostile actors and power our green transition together. In an era of fragmentation, let us choose the partner that stands with us. For a secure, sovereign Europe, we must look to Canada. Thank you, and I want to thank Tobias and the other fellow shadow rapporteurs for the very constructive approach in this debate. Thank you, Tobias.
Thank you very much. Next speaker for Greens, Ville Niinisto.
Mr. President, The Arctic is heating up, not only because of climate change, but also because of geopolitics. That is also why cooperation between the European Union and Canada matters more than ever. We have a lot of values that bind ourselves together, and we also have a possibility to forge an alliance where we can solve environmental, geopolitical and economic challenges together to create the North as a region of peace, environmental protection, and also, when it comes to the Arctic, also respect for the indigenous people's rights. Our partnership should pave way also for decarbonisation, climate action, and also creating a fair and transparent international rules-based order. On these issues, we need also honesty. It is important that we update also our trade agreements, so I think it's important that we also reflect on our developed standards on climate ambition and democratic standards when it comes to trade agreements, but also that we forge these agreements. Security and defence cooperation, additionally, is very important with Canada. I think this outcome is a good outcome, and I thank the rapporteur and the shadows for good cooperation.
Thank you very much. For the left group will speak Mark Botenga. Floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, we're talking here about our duty to protect Canada from the United States. You've all seen Donald Trump's flag, putting the American flag over the map of Canada as if he wished to annex it as the nth state of the Union. And perhaps Canada has reason to be concerned. I mean, Trump, he doesn't mess about. He's kidnapped the leader of Venezuela. He now wants to appoint the new supreme leader of Iran, tell him what to do. And at the same time, he is imposing a suffocating embargo on Cuba, which is now deprived of fuel. People can't keep their fridges going to preserve their food. And in hospitals, they're having to operate using the light from their mobile phones. All of this means that one has to be very cautious about criticising the United States. You don't really dare say anything. If any other country had done, just a tiny fraction of what the US has done, we'd all be up in arms about it. But developing a relationship with Canada can be a good thing. If this is to help them break away from imperialism, what is Canada doing? Canada is wondering how they can protect themselves against American imperialism. We have to make sure that we don't follow the mistakes made by Canada when they have gone along with this imperialism in the past.
President, we do have to carefully examine our relationship with Canada in the context of broader geopolitical trends, because the whole world order is being changed, particularly by the US. So we need a deeper relationship with Canada, not to gang up on the US, but to take account of all of these changes, because we have common values and we have common interests. Canada is an Arctic state. We have common interests there for security and defence. For that reason, it's very important to have Canada in the SAFE programme. We also have commercial interests. We have trade agreements with Canada, which demonstrates how you can achieve an increase in trade, 63% in this occasion, through bringing in such an agreement. And even France has been benefiting from this agreement. So the countries have been benefiting even if they weren't ratified.
Merci, chers collègues.
Thank you. Colleagues, Tobias, who are our allies going to be tomorrow in a world shaken by the return of brutal force? Europe has to stand together with those countries ready to stand up to imperialism, whether it's coming from Russia, China or where. When Mark Carney spoke in Davos in January this year, he said out loud what a lot of Europeans are keeping into their own thoughts. He talked about rupture in international relations, that the USA were no longer a reliable partner, and he said that from this fracture we can build up something better, stronger and fairer. The Canadian Prime Minister had the courage to stand up to Trump, threatened by US tariffs, with the 3/4 of Canadian exports depending on the US market. But they boycotted when Trump threatened to turn them into a 51st state. It's a lesson in dignity for Europe to know how to be true to your values and make yourself respected. In a world marked by rivalry between big powers, we know what to do. We have to get together to create a third path, and that's what we need. Solidarity between Europeans and with other democracies like Canada, which refuse this brutal violence. Thank you.
Dale, floor is yours.
Thank you. I'll speak in Danish. Vi står i en helt ny sikkerhedspolitisk.
This is a completely new geopolitical reality where some of the big powers have left behind the international world order. So it's decisive. We have to fight this pressure from outside. Some of our very best friends in this changing world is the Canadian people. 77% of the Canadians want to increase cooperation with the EU, so we should show due diligence and do even more to integrate more with the Canadian economy and our European market on a whole host of areas. We share an understanding of global warming, and Carney's government has been a steadfast support for Denmark and Greenland vis-à-vis the threats from the US. Alliances should be built with countries that are like-minded and share our interests, so we have to increase our alliance with Canada. Thank you.
Speaker Lynn Boylan, for 1 minute, please.
It's very clear that the current trade turmoil is being cynically exploited to push through the investor court system that is in CETA. And we see this happening now with the Irish government, one of the 10 who hasn't ratified CETA, who are advancing legislation to introduce investor courts. If Canada is such a reliable partner that colleagues have talked about tonight, if Canada is almost like an EU country, why then do we need investor courts between us? Investor courts are undemocratic bodies established to serve the interests of multinational corporations and undermine the right to regulate. The global ISDS tracker has highlighted that more than $100 billion of public money has been awarded to private investors in investor courts, with the bulk of those going to fossil fuel companies. So the EU has already recognised the danger of investor courts and has withdrawn from the Energy Charter Treaty because they accept that these courts undermine public policy, particularly on climate action. Yet the report before us ignores the real concerns of citizens right across Europe that their public money will be used for huge payouts to multinationals. I urge colleagues to vote against this report.
Thank you. Next speaker, Reinhold Lopatka.
Dear colleagues, we must strengthen and deepen our relationship and our partnership with Canada. Canada is one of the most trusted partners and a close friend of Europe. And our cooperation is built on shared values, democracy, human rights, or our commitment to a rule-based international order, which is so important in these days. And our cooperation is deeply economic. Since the provisional application of the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement between the European Union and Canada, our economies has increased by around 65%. Reaching 80 billion euros in goods trade annually. The Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, recently highlighted middle powers gain strength by acting together. That's the most important thing in days like this. Let's do exactly this, acting together for rule-based international order. This is the task for Canada and the European Union.
Thank you. Next speaker, Krzysztof Śmiszek, please.
Predictability. In times when decisions are taken driven by inflated egos and emotions, it is predictability that we must strive for. With predictability comes the potential for stability, for peace and for security. These values are precisely what can be achieved with an alliance between two trustworthy partners, Canada and the European Union. So much unites us: respect for human rights and the rule of law, trade agreements, open, kind and tolerant societies, resistance to bloody conflicts ignited by mad dictators. And there is only one thing that divides us: Atlantic Ocean. Ours is this long-distance relationship. Let's strengthen it despite any obstacles. And it is obvious that if Canada was closer, it would already be in the European Union. Prime Minister Carney brings the wave of reason and stability from the continent in chaos. And it is the EU-Canada alliance that turns that wave into a line of defense. The defense of freedom and defense of democracy. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Michal Szczerba. Kolega Szczerba, floor is yours.
Thank you, President, Commissioner. Cooperation of the EU and Canada is a strategic investment in our security. And the first important step to enhance it was the signing of the Security and Defence Partnership during the Polish presidency. But another step I want to mention here is the partnership regarding the involvement of Canada in the SAFE instrument. We try to enforce the implementation of our strategic goals, military goals, but we also offer very good products in that field. Poland offers such products. This cooperation between the EU and Canada is also important in the context of Ukraine, because Ukraine is perfect in the production of anti-drone technology, and Ukraine could share their knowledge as it has shared it while combating Iranian drones, Shahed drones. So we support this cooperation and we hope it will develop. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you, Madam Commissioner, colleagues. During this intense time of geopolitical turmoil, strengthening cooperation with our allies and like-minded partners has never been more important. This report on enhanced EU-Canada cooperation comes at a crucial moment. My congratulations to Rapporteur Mr. Kramer. At times like these, when democratic institutions and rules are continuously threatened, the European Union and Canada must explore new avenues of mutual understanding. Partnerships are not only about broadening economic ties, but about defending the rule-based order. While we face threats to the very existence of our democratic system, an enhanced EU-Canada cooperation will send a clear message that democracies have to stand together. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney advocated in his excellent speech delivered in Davos even closer cooperation of so-called middle powers in these times of uncertainty. European Union and Canada must lead, first of all, global alliance in respecting international law and human rights. And in this respect, Canada and European Union should serve as a superpower. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, Mika Aaltola. Floor is yours.
Thank you. The Arctic is no longer a frozen periphery. It is the next great arena for geopolitical competition, and Europe is just waking up. Russia has militarized its Arctic coastline. China calls itself a neo-Arctic state and invests in it. And the United States, our ally, is openly coercing Canada, Denmark and Greenland. Canada shares our vulnerability and our interest in the secured Arctic frontline. We need a dedicated EU-Canada Arctic framework on security. It is not enough. We need space capabilities, joint situational awareness, and we need a real investment. The ice-breaking capacity, the logistics and infrastructure across the high north, we are talking about tens of billions of euros. The commitment should be at geostrategic scale. The Arctic will be defined by whoever shows up. Europe must finally show up with its economic might, with Canada besides it.
Thank you. Next speaker, Lukas Kohut. Floor is yours.
Geopolityka wróciła w...
Geopolitics is back in the form of pressure and the power politics. In the US, the cradle of democracy, Trump is treating geopolitics like a business transaction. In this context, old alliances are no longer of any import. Our cooperation with Canada must be deeper. Democracies must stand together. The alternative is simple. Either we co-create the new rules or we get new rules written by somebody else. Sovereignty in the 21st century is not about standing alone. It's about being part of a strong alliance. Future is in the hands of those who are able to build such alliances. Trump, Putin, Orban or Nawrocki in Poland, they fail to understand. Isolationism today is a death sentence. Alone, we are in danger. With Canada, we'll get stronger.
Matej Tonin, please.
Colleagues, dear brothers and sisters from Canada, well, I see them as our American colleagues. We have a lot of similarities, and it is only right that the EU and Canada have a deep cooperation. In the past, Canada has proven itself as a reliable partner when it came to the defense of our eastern borders. There was Canada, and Canada is in Latvia and helps protect our eastern borders. And when we take a look into the Arctic to the north, the new geopolitical front line, where China and Russia already implement their interests, Canada is of utmost importance. This is why we need courage to take appropriate decisions, and it is the CETA agreement that gives the foundation for that. It is up to us to ratify this treaty, this agreement, as soon as possible.
Please.
Dear colleagues, I would like to talk about the extraordinary dynamic that affects our relationship with Canada in the area of raw materials and how positive this can be. Canada has announced its strategy with a view to defence, that they are getting to work. They are committing to new raw materials projects and mobilising double-digit million figures for this. While keeping environmental and social standards, they want to relaunch mining as a sector that provides crucial raw materials that needs to be strengthened. Colleagues, this represents a huge opportunity for us because everything is right with Canada. Geopolitics, trade agreement, political priorities, emphasis on recycling, the complementarity of our values. And now we have to stay on an equal footing with Canada. We also need to invest. We have to discover new supply chains and we have to integrate our markets further rather than competing with one another with by European or by Canadian clauses. Thank you.
Gracias, Presidente. Thank you, President. Commissioner, colleagues. The use of tariffs in an abusive way distort the market, change the rules, and undermine consumers in the sector, livestock, farming. Right now, the political situation, we are seeing an increase in production costs, and also we are seeing tariffs affecting fertilizers and the rest of it. Now, these are unjustified tariffs. On top of that, we think that, we can actually overcome this and many other things by pushing ahead with CETA, which has brought benefits to a lot of sectors, particularly to the livestock sector and farming. It's transparent, fair for both sides, Europe and Canada. And Well, this is a reliable partner, and in these geopolitical times, I think we're seeing trade increasing by 33%, maritime security, logistics, health, education, technology. All of that, we have to do it together. Thank you.
I have on my list 3 speakers. First would be Juan Fernando López Aguilar.
De este debate resulta claro.
Well, listening to this debate, we've got a recommendation here from the European Parliament for strengthening cooperation with Canada, with a like-minded partner for strengthening security in the Arctic. We provided such support to Greenland and its constitutional status, international rules, multilateralism, WTO rules, not using tariffs as a kind of weapon in a war. So we're strengthening cooperation not only through trade, but through politics and through the preferences which we express, and that's what CETA can mean too. There's been a lot of fake news about CETA. People saying it's going to be the end of the world for certain sectors, but it's proving positive for consumers and for companies with mutual trust.
Sebastian Timkinen.
Dear President, Canada is, without question, one of Europe's closest partners. Strengthening our cooperation should be an obvious priority. That is precisely why it is so disappointing to read this new EU-Canada report. Instead of focusing on defence, economic resilience or strategic cooperation, this text reads like a catalogue of left-wing talking points. Climate slogans, green ideology, and yet another round of finger-pointing at the United States. Seriously, is this ideological signalling all we have to offer? This new report is more about leftist political messaging than real geopolitics. I cannot support such a report. EU-Canada cooperation deserves a serious strategic partnership, not a lecture drafted through the lens of climate activism and anti-American rhetoric. Europe should do better.
Thank you. Next speaker, Lucas Zipel.
Dear people of Europe, Mr. Tinkinen, climate protection is not an ideology, it's a necessity. Frau Kommissarin, ich möchte auf...
Madam Commissioner, I want to refer to something that Ms. Bentler flagged up. With Canada, everything is right. Canada ticks all the boxes. And when I have a quiet moment, I think about the EU and I ask myself, what is the EU actually? The EU is a legal construct, a supranational organisation, a union of values, a union of a common market, but as a concept, as an idea, what is it? Can Europe alone do what the EU can do? I don't think so. I think the idea of the European Union, this union of common values, this meeting of states on an equal footing is something that could work throughout the world. Perhaps I'm a bit of a dreamer, but perhaps one fine day, we'll also have a union with Canada. Thank you.
KGI procedure is closed, and I now would like to ask to take floor for the Commission. Commissioner Kos, floor is yours.
Dear President Zile, honourable members, thank you for this important and timely debate. If Europe wants to become more independent, yes, indeed, we need partners like Canada. It's reassuring to know, as we intensify our engagement with Canada, that we have the broad backing of all EU institutions. Of course, I am aware that some irritants remain, but given our solid channel of communication to Canada, we are confident that we can resolve them. I would like to ask all MEPs present today who are from a member state that has not yet ratified CETA to act as ambassadors for ratification back home. The trade figures with Canada, we heard them, really speak for themselves. At a time when trade diversification is a priority, both the EU and Canada would benefit from the boost that ratification would bring. We very much hope to be able to count on the support of this Parliament to advance our shared management and engagement with this critical partner, even if it's, as we have heard from Mr. Schmisek, a long-distance relationship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Rapporteur Tobias Kremer has the floor.
Dear colleagues, dear Commissioner, dear Marta, thank you, all of you, for this very positive debate. Sometimes transatlantic relations can seem complicated, can seem tricky and even a little bit uncomfortable. This transatlantic relationship does not. It's straightforward. It's clear. It's in our interest to cooperate. And I think all the rapporteurs who have really shown qualities that the Canadians have shown us as well. That is courage, that is clarity, and that is also the ability to see the bigger picture. Colleagues, let us understand in what situation we are in. In this report, we can make clear that Europe has understood the challenge we are facing, and we can show the same courage as the Canadians have done in this moment of rupture. And if some colleagues like Mr. Tinkinen think that's far-left rhetoric to seize this moment, I recommend first actually read the report, and second, if you're still unhappy, talk to your rapporteur who supported this very clearly at ECR, because there are some people, even in your party, that understand the necessity in this moment to cooperate with Canada. Thank you.
Thank you.
Colleagues, we close the debate on this agenda and the voting will take place tomorrow. The next item on the agenda is the Council and Commission statements cutting the red tape to enable a competitive and clean transition, the urgent need to shorten and simplify permitting.
So we will wait a moment for change now. Now I would like to give a floor for the Council Deputy Minister for European Affairs, Madame Raona.
President, honourable members, Commissioner, Europe is facing a new geopolitical and geoeconomic reality. Surging energy prices, shifting supply chains, and an accelerating race for clean industrial leadership. In this context, simplifying and shortening permitting procedures is not a technical matter. It is a strategic imperative. European legislation needs to be made simpler to enable our energy transition and contribute to a more competitive European economy. Accelerating the permit granting procedures in the field of energy is a key element to remove grid's bottlenecks and support our energy industries. The question is how to get there. We all agree that electrification has become one of the main drivers of energy transition. And electrification will be instrumental to achieve our climate objectives and our energy security, which in turn is inextricably linked with our strategic autonomy. It will also help our economy with affordable energy prices and boosting the Union's industrial sector and its competitiveness, providing affordable energy to our SMEs and our households. Speeding up electrification requires accelerating the development of the grid's infrastructure, addressing remaining energy infrastructure gaps, and enhancing our interconnections. These are not merely goals. It is the implementation of the lessons learned from the 2022 energy crisis. That crisis made clear that interconnectivity equals security. A robust energy grid ensures that electricity can be transmitted efficiently. This stabilises prices and ensures security of supply. We are therefore committed at the Council to prioritise the work on the grids package, together with you, the European Parliament and the European Commission. We are holding intensive discussions in the Council on the two legislative files which form part of the Greece package. The Cyprus presidency aims to reach general approaches on these files in June. As soon as both co-legislators are ready with their positions, the interinstitutional negotiations can start. Later this month, the European Council will discuss the importance of the Greece package in the context of the overall discussion on competitiveness and the single market. We welcome this development as the Cyprus presidency strongly believes that the Greece package is a crucial component of the broader picture for addressing how to support European industries boost their competitiveness, how to improve the functioning of the single market, and the delivery of a true energy union, part of our presidency's overarching objective for a more autonomous union. Honourable Members, Commissioner, the Industrial Accelerator Act, published last week, aims to address lengthy and complex permitting procedures which often prevent new industrial manufacturing projects from being launched. The Act introduces digital permitting procedures to be used for industrial manufacturing projects as well as for the decarbonisation projects in energy-intensive industries. The Presidency will treat the Industrial Accelerator Act proposal as a priority. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Now I would like to ask to take floor for the Commission. Commissioner Oswald, floor is yours.
Thank you, President, Minister Rona, honourable members. Thank you for this opportunity to discuss fast and efficient permitting, which is crucial both for the green transition and for our competitiveness. We urgently need to accelerate our decarbonisation, increase our independence and strategic autonomy, and make it easier for business in the European Union. We need to be very clear about the state of play. Europe cannot meet our vital strategic goals on competitiveness, economic resilience, prosperity, climate action, or environmental health, while we are so dependent on critical areas like raw materials and energy. Permitting procedures in Member States are central to these goals. Today, these procedures often take too long. They are fragmented, complex, and implemented differently in different Member States. This undermines our ability to grow and adapt our economies to today's challenges. Stakeholders regularly point to this matter as an obstacle to grow. A clunky and cumbersome permitting system benefits nobody. It only serves to frustrate citizens, slow down the clean transition, delay vital process, and hold back our industry. Our Union, the Commission, the Member States and this Parliament have a collective responsibility to act within our respective competences to address this. Honourable Members, environmental assessments are a key part of permitting procedures. They enable well-informed decision or whether or not to authorise a project, and they assure high standards of environmental protection, human health, legal certainty and social acceptance. At the same time, as I said, this is an area with lots of space for improvement. In this context, our environmental omnibus from last December, especially the regulation on speeding up environmental assessment, has a very clear objective: streamlining, simplifying and accelerating environmental assessment and therefore speeding up permitting processes. Our proposal maximises the efficiency of environmental assessments in 5 pieces of EU legislation. For example, we now propose a one-stop shop where project developers can turn to dedicated single point of contact. It replaces complication and complexity with simplicity and speed. At the same time, we are giving flexibility to Member States to adjust their own national context. Crucially, through digitalisation, and the proposal will help to adapt our permitting systems to a modern world. This will make the process cleaner and shorter for everyone involved. The regulation also provides a substantive preclusion for member states that wish to use it. This will help to avoid obstructive, abusive litigations while maintaining access to justice. Honourable Member, in the current economic and geopolitical context, we cannot afford to bury our heads in the sand. Business as usual is simply not an option. We have to prioritise strategic sectors that are vital to our citizens, societies and economies, and vital for our future. As an example, we urgently need to step up EU defence capabilities, and we have to achieve energy resilience and build on the European grid package that the Commission adopted in December. That means special rules on environmental assessments are justified for defence, for renewable and for grids development. Our proposal recognises these needs and will support key strategic sectors. For example, it would speed up administrative steps and it would ensure that strategic sectors enjoy preference in dispute settlements. Not to weaken our high standards and not to override access to justice or appeal, but to accelerate the permitting procedures, to reduce fragmentation and to ensure that as much coherence across sectors as possible. Honourable Members, this overall framework will help simplify and accelerate permitting, lower investment risk and speed up projects. And it will do so while upholding our high environmental standards and protecting people's human health. With the environmental omnibus, we are proposing a coherent framework with consistent rules across member states and sectors. This is real simplification in action. Now it is for this Parliament and to the member states, the co-legislators, to decide on the way forward. And I count on your support for swift interinstitutional negotiations, and together we can deliver an efficient and effective permitting process that protects us and our environment, but also paves the way to a more competitive, resilient and independent Europe. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. For EPP Group will speak Lydia Pereira. Floor is yours.
Thank you very much, President. This week, Europeans, including millions of Portuguese, are paying 25 cents more per litre of diesel. Generally, fuel prices have gone up, and Europe has not been at the table in the discussions where prices have been set. And this is where the problem lies. We are vulnerable. We are exposed when it comes to fossil fuels, and this undermines our competitiveness. There are conflicts around the world, there's a lot of uncertainty, and such a dependency is a constraint upon us. It undermines our freedom, and it undermines citizens' trust in the EU. It undermines our values and our prosperity. Extreme climate events are increasingly frequent and devastating. They haven't been enough for us to move towards a true clean transition. So we need to ensure that we examine all the dimensions of this. It's about well-being, justice and the future. It's not only an economic issue when fuel prices go up. It's about families, businesses. We need to ensure that we have an economic model that leaves behind those traditional emission patterns. We need a new pattern. We need a public sector that doesn't impose red tape and make things difficult, but acts as a driver for growth and makes things easier, makes things quicker, so that we can move towards clean energy. That's not about ideology. That's not about wokeism, as the far right would have it. It's about necessity. We need interconnections that work. We need smart energy use, and we need to stop depending on imported fossil fuels. The time has come for us to do this together, with a vision, with courage, so that our future will be in our own hands, and we'll have a prosperous economy with decent wages to hand on to the next generation.
Mohammed Shahim, please.
Dank u, voorzitter.
Thank you, Mr. President. When you look at the energy misery in which Europe finds itself, then you can only draw one conclusion, which we should wean ourselves off energy imports as soon as possible. That's our mission. For people who are worried about the cost of living, the economy and our security ought to support this. You can't just keep on calling for less regulation, but then not stand up for European clean energy. More solar panels, oh nonsense. Wind energy, oh it's bad for birds. Helping people in energy poverty to insulate their homes, oh no, that's not necessary. Mr. President, it is clear that gas from Putin or oil from the Middle East are not the solution to our crises. They are the reason why, time and again, we find ourselves in crisis. They're the cause of it all. What I see is a self-sufficient Europe where we don't depend on just a few outside parties for our energy, but where we produce energy ourselves, and where the price of our energy bills is not determined by the price of expensive imports. That's what the Commission should be working on, and every party in this Parliament should be calling for this.
Will speak Antonin Staniek. Floor is yours.
Pane předsedající, paní komisařko, kolegyně, kolego.
President. Europe wants to be a leader in clean technology, but all too often complicated permitting procedures undermine all of that. Elsewhere in the world, projects are approved with a matter of months, but in Europe, it can take years. Europe doesn't need more forms right now. What it needs are more projects, overlapping rules, unclear competences, and never-ending administrative procedures slow down infrastructure and industry and weaken our competitiveness. So what we need are faster, more transparent and predictable permitting processes, and that's why we should shorten the deadlines, we should simplify procedures, and we should throw out excessive bureaucracy. If we want investment in Europe and not for it to go elsewhere in the world, we must act now. Thank you.
Mantovani, floor is yours.
Presidente, Commissario.
President, Commissioner, colleagues, we've been talking about bureaucracy in the energy sector. Do you know how long it takes to get a renewables plant up and running in Europe? 11 years for wind energy and 3 to 4 for solar. 5 different permitting processes.